Your ears do not deceive you. You have just entered the Cryptid Creator Corner brought to you by your friends at Comic Book Yeti. So without further ado, let's get on to the interview.
Hey comics fam, does a realm-trotting dystopian fantasy adventure that cleverly explores Norse mythology sound up your alley? It sure does mine. So I was excited to see one of my favorite comic creators, Eisner and Harvey award-winning Michael Avon Oeming, is launching a new Kickstarter project collecting issues 1 through 5 of his creator-owned series After the Realm in July. I just got a chance to get an early peek, and it's fantastic. With over 300 pages of material, including 22 new pages of story, it follows a young rebellious ranger named Una Lightfoot trying to find her best friend. As the tale of friendship and destiny unfolds, the 9 realms are torn asunder, with Loki up to his usual troublemaking self, of course. It should come as no surprise at this point that the cast of unusual characters Michael created in the book includes some anthropomorphic animals. But I can't say I've ever seen them riding roughshod across the land in mini tanks a la Mad Max Fury Road before, so I'm so here for it. Quirky, slightly beautifully unhinged, and completely engrossing, the immediate analogs to me were The Legend of Zelda meets The Mighty Thor with Norse underpinnings for perspective. Michael is handling both the writing and the artwork duties, with Taki Soma on colors and Soo Lee lettering the project. Head on over to Kickstarter and make sure you back this, cause it's epic. Y'all, Jimmy, the Chaos Goblin, strikes again. I should have known better than to mention I was working on my DC Universe meets Ravenloft hybrid D&D campaign on social media. My bad. He goes and tags a bunch of comics creators we know, and now I have to get it in gear and whip this campaign into shape so we can start playing. Another friend chimes in, "Are you going to make maps?" It's fair to say it's been a while since I put something together, so I guess? It was then that I discovered Arkenforge. If you don't know who Arkenforge is, they have everything you need to make your TTRPG more fun and immersive, allowing you to build, play, and export animated maps, including in-person fog of war capability that lets your players interact with maps as the adventure unfolds while you, the DM, get the full picture. Now I'm set to easily build high-res animated maps, saving myself precious time and significantly adding nuance to our campaign. That's a win every day in my book. Check them out at arkenforge.com and use the discount code YETI5 to get $5 off. I'll drop a link in the show notes for you, and big thanks to Arkenforge for partnering with our show. I think I'm going to make Jimmy play a Goblin Warlock just to get even.
Hello, and welcome to Comic Book Yeti's Cryptid Creator Corner podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Jimmy Gasparo, and I have an illustrator, artist, and writer here on the program today. She's actually been pulling double duty recently on a One Dynamite series, Maleficent. Also, I just recently read the fantastic Carmilla, the First Vampire, but we're going to talk a lot about Cheetara, the new #1 spinning off of the Dynamite ThunderCats comic, which issue #1 is going to be out July 3rd, I believe. But I'm very excited to welcome to the podcast Soo Lee. Soo, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Jimmy. I'm excited to be here. Really, I'm really grateful that people want to talk to me about Cheetara, especially.
No, I mean, I was a fan of ThunderCats as a kid. I'm an old man now, 45, so like that hit when I was a young lad, and I think I had all the toys, and I probably somewhere in my parents' basement is still a box with some of the old toys in it. So I was a fan of it, and I've been very excited by some of the different comic book publishers that are kind of reviving 80s and 90s properties and kind of giving them new life and a new spin. And Dynamite has been doing some really interesting things, not only with the Thundercats, but also with some of their Disney characters that they've been doing, like Cruella, and you've been doing, I think, both writing and artist duties on the Maleficent comic.
Yes,
which is pretty exciting. But yeah, so let's start with Cheetara, and I just kind of wanted to get a sense, like, were you a fan of ThunderCats at all? Like, before, were you aware of it? Like, what was kind of your interest in it? if
Yeah,
anything.
no, I think
You don't have to have a great interest to write a great story.
I mean, it was definitely in my peripherals when I was a kid and I watched it here and there, but I don't think I ever got to really take a look at it until it was like, rerunning in like Cartoon Network or something like that. Like late 2000, early 2000s, I mean, so that's when I
Yeah.
really got to like watch the show. And then, you know, haven't watched it since. And then, when they asked me to write it, I actually jumped onto some of the episodes and just kind of for homework watched a
Uh-huh.
bunch of episodes.
Yeah, 'cause I think I mean there was the 80s series, and I think there was like a short-lived like 2011 or 2012. I don't know
Oh
who it
yeah.
was, but there was like like a short-lived season or two version of the
Hmm.
cartoon. Yeah, but yeah, even if you're just aware of it a little bit, to get the opportunity to write, just a character like Cheetara, and I watched it when I was a kid and have read the 5 issues that have just come out for the main series, but, I mean, she's like a really powerful, like, wise, like, independent character, and especially other than, like, Wily Kit, really the only female of the group to balance against
Right.
Lion-O, Tigra, and, and Panthro. I mean, it I'm curious, did having to, kind of take on the writing duties for that type of character, was that a big draw to it as well? Not just it being like the Thundercats, but the character in particular?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, she's the only adult female
Yeah.
character in Thundercats, right?
Yeah.
But it's interesting because, she exists and we like if you rewatch the cartoons, you'll know like what kind of person she is or what kind of character she is. But it's cool because it's a kind of a clean slate, right? We know of the character, but we don't really know anything about her. So it's like I'm just kind of putting the pieces of what I've seen and like her powers and try to get a sense of the personality she has from the snippets. She kind of plays like this supporting role, not a main character, right?
Yeah.
Um, Even some of the fighting scenes I feel like are were there's like not much that showcases much of it, much powers especially. So I find it really fun and also really difficult to kind of have like an entire reign of that's like hasn't been established.
Yeah. But and it's interesting with your series, it sounds like you're kinda going back to talking about, or dealing with some of those things before they got to, uh, Third Earth, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's definitely like a prelude. It was like it starts a few years before episode 1, So it's like before everything happens, before we know who they are and why they ended up where they are, So it's kind of like, I mean the fun part and the difficult part is like what is that story? And then it's easy because I get to frame it around person, but you know the other characters kind of like because they are a team, the other characters make the story as well, so it's not just about her, but she is like the center stage for once.
Yeah. That's what I find like really kind of interesting, because you can do, there's a lot of creative freedom in terms of filling out that backstory and, writing a really character driven story. Plus you have the opportunity for a lot of action, which I think is
Yeah.
pretty neat. And the artist on it is Domenico Carbone.
Car- Carbone, yeah.
Yeah. Was there, as an artist as well, was there any part of you that were like, "Oh, I'm comfortable being just in like on the writing side of things rather than the art?"
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I've done it very briefly for like a one-shot Vampirella story. So it was like cool to have someone draw, my script and everything. But this is like kind of like a bigger project, right? I mean, it's only 5 issues, but it is kind of because it's like, kind of a big, license
Yeah.
thing, and all like people love these characters, right? So I wanted the characters to be uh like I wanted the characters to be cool, and at the same time, like Domenico, like giving complete reins of what it should look like. Well, okay, not complete reins. I did write a script, right, and I have to like structure the script a certain way. No, but I wanted to give all my trust to him and be like, "You're the artist," right? Like other writers would give me trust to draw the story in the way I see fit, right? So you got to have that mutual, respect and trust for the team. And he's so talented. There was no reason why I saw the character designs and I was like, "Oh yeah, he's great. He's amazing." I saw the layouts and the pencils, and I saw the full book and I was like, no, this is really good. It looks so good. If you hate my story, at least you'll love the art, I think. Like, no, you'll definitely love the art. So, thank God for him.
Yeah. Well, do you think, as somebody who also is, is not, you're writing this, but not just a writer. I mean, you're, fine line illustrator, and you've worked with other writers before. Like I mentioned early on, Carmilla, the first vampire, working with Amy Chu. It, do you think it's because you know what it's like to get a script, a comic script, and kind of put your own stamp on it? Do you feel like you're more adept when you're in, wearing your writing hat and giving a script to an artist, or are you tougher?
Okay, so, all great questions. As an artist, yes, it is. Oh, I wish the script would be presented to me in this way, or um, so in that lens, I think, okay, really easy way for him to work on this book, right? There's like a language barrier, right? So it is very interesting. I mean, but he's great. Like he understands everything that I'm saying. But I was worried about that at first. But
Hmm.
no, it was fine. So that was number one. Um, and I thought like when I write the script, I was like, let me give you a one sentence synopsis of what every page is. So before he even reads the panels, I say, this scene is a romance scene, or this is an action scene, or this scene, this is going to happen with these characters. So he knows what to get into. It's not like very precise, but it's so he knows what to get into. And then sometimes I'll say, very like direct about what every page, what every panel should be, but because not every artist is the same either. My brain works differently, right? So I'm like, I don't want to give too many details where you get lost in the sauce and like, you're like, okay, well, what am I actually drawing? No, no. This happens, this person's smiling, or this person's frowning. But like I won't be like, draw this person standing on the right. I said, this person's in it, that person's in it. I trust you as an artist to figure out the direction of where these characters should be. And then at the same time, sometimes I'll be like, make these 3 action panels cool. I trust you. And then like, yeah, I said, just make it look good,
Yeah.
because you know, no matter what I say, he's gonna see it differently. So just do it.
Right.
I believe in him. It looks great so far. So, I want to give him as much freedom, because it's nice when they give me freedom. Um, and then they don't. There's not a lot of like things to bog down the script. So I'm, like it's not too heavy. You know.
Yeah. No, I think that makes sense. I was just curious in terms of, if you're uh uh, I get, not more strict is the wrong word, but maybe more of like a discerning eye, because you're an artist. But it's good to hear that you no, I think that you appreciate that freedom when a writer gives you a script.
Yeah.
Because there's always a little bit of a dance in terms of collaboration to figure
Sure.
out how, two people are going to work together. So
Yeah. Actually, there was 2 more questions to that, right? That I completely did not answer. What were they? Sorry,
No,
they were all very good questions.
you're fine. If I think of them, I'll spit
Okay.
them out again. But no,
But not strict. No, you're right.
Yeah.
Not strict, right? Because it's fun. It's you're in a team, and it's like it's really like fun to see. Oh, so what I wanted to say was that like I envision something, and ultimately, when I do see the pages, they're completely different than what I would have drawn it as. But it still looks so cool, you know. So I'm like, but that's the beauty of art, and like a different artist putting their spin on it. So it's like even if I was like, which I'm surprisingly am not, right? So I feel like I'm a decent enough writer to like give leeway, and like
Yeah.
a decent enough artist to be like, I know when someone's doing their own thing and like letting them do it, but no, I'm not like, oh, I would have done this panel this way. I just look at it and I'm like, this is what it feels like to be a writer. I'm like, this looks really cool. I don't even remember what happens here, but that looks really good.
All right, let's take a quick break. Hey comics fam, indie comic book publisher Band of Bars just got a level up and announced it is now a cooperative. This heralds a new era for them, including a partnership with Dauntless Stories. And they added several new members to the ownership group. Marcus Jimenez is now Chief Operating Officer, Brent Fisher takes on the role of Chief Diversity Officer, and Joey Galvez is introduced as Head of Kickstarter Ops and Social Media Manager, which is sure to increase their capabilities overall as a publisher. And it further promotes their mission statement of advancing representation, inclusion, and diversity in the media. They also established a new board of directors to help chart the new path of their journey. With new projects in the works like Alas Goodbye dropping in June, Unbroken soon launching on Kickstarter, and Pawn coming up with Dauntless, stay tuned to this space for more exciting news from the growing Bards family. Let's get back to the show.
With the main series, with the the other ongoing title, do you have any interaction with like that creative team to make sure, like, in terms of that your characterization of some of the other characters and Cheetara like lines up? Is that all, like, do you talk to the other teams, or is it all done through like editorial, or do you have kind of like a lot of like freedom and leeway to check that out and then do your own interpretation?
So it has nothing to do with the main series. So I have complete freedom to do whatever I want
Oh,
with it.
that's awesome.
But yeah, which is also kind of scary, right? But I did, Declan and Nate, our editor, like kind of sat together to like just talk about the grand scheme of where the book is, right? And then
Mhm.
I want to make sure that some of the dialogue matches what Declan is doing, because I don't want them to be like, oh, they're not talking the same. I felt like that was at least one of the most important things to tie the characters in together.
Yeah.
Um, because it's like the story has nothing to do with each other, and they could even be different people, because remember, this is like years, way years before anything happened, so they've all like grown up in Declan's story, right? But that's like mostly what I like wanted to make sure was kind of those switches dialogue. But there's also an interesting thing. I'm not going to spoil it, but there was something that came up, and I was like, hey, why was it this? Or what should we do? Should we keep it? Should we change it? And so we kind of like, because of what I brought up, I'm not going to spoil anything. You're not going to know what it is.
Yeah,
But it's really cool on our end, because I'm like, oh, now this is going to impact the story later on, because we had to make the executive decision, and we did it together, which is really cool. Because I
yeah.
figured like, this has nothing to do with anything, but hey, something does.
That is pretty cool. No, I was just curious if there was like, a connecting of the dots, or, how it all was working
Hmm.
together.
Yeah.
I'm assuming in terms of you, like, that your work on Maleficent led to like Cheetara, through Dynamite. So I was kind of curious, like, how did Maleficent, come about for you? And especially, being able to do writer and artist on that series.
I've worked with Nate before. He was the same editor on it, and he was just like, "Hey, do you want to do something weird? You know, you want to write and draw your own story?" I was like, "Okay, sure, why not?" Right? Literally. And then he came to me and was like, "Hey, you want to write Cheetara?" And I'm like, "Super random, but sure, let's do it."
Yeah. Oh, that's great. Yeah, the Maleficent, all those like those Disney books that Dynamite has been doing, those are very interesting takes on all those characters. And I haven't gotten to check out all of the Maleficent one, but what I've seen, I mean, it looks fantastic. And
Thank you.
what a fun character to kind of get to, play around with.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, she was also built because Disney is very strict. See, now they're very strict. You can and cannot do many things with certain characters. There's a lot of hurdles to get through, but ultimately, I really like the voice I gave her.
Yeah. So with something like that, when you're working with, you know, a somebody else's property and they are very strict with the character, do they give you like a laundry list of like do's and don'ts beforehand, or is just you just pitch something and if they say okay, but we want to approve it each step of the way, like how does that work?
No, no, they definitely give you a laundry list of things you cannot and
Okay.
can and can't do for sure, which makes it easier because then at least I know what to do. Like
Yeah.
there's a starting point, which is
Right.
I'm very grateful for. But
Gives
with
you a bit of
Chitara, they were like, yeah, they were like, no, just do whatever you want. I was like, okay.
yeah, no, that freedom seems like, I mean, having all the do's and don'ts seems like a fun, challenge, but I certainly see the benefit of having the creative freedom to be like, all right, we're going to build this thing from the ground up.
hmm For sure, for sure.
Yeah. I wanted to talk a little bit about, in terms of how you had gotten your artistic start and your start in comics.
Oh
So,
God.
I mean, we don't have to, but I always
No, no,
find it
it's like, where did
interesting.
I start? How many years ago was that? What year are we in?
I think it's 2024, but I've not been able to keep track of the years, at least the past couple of them.
Exactly.
If somebody told me tomorrow that this has all been a simulation, I'd be like, look, that tracks, you know?
It I was gonna say, you know what? Makes a lot of sense. Okay, I'm not even gonna
um,
doubt it. You know what? Okay.
yeah. So what led you to comics? Were you a fan of comics growing up, or was it something that you found later in life? How did you make your way to writing and drawing comics?
Yeah, no, I'm always a fan of comics, read manga, comic books, like Batman, just manga in general. It was like mostly my start. Hellboy, just so many. Like I'm so many like main ones that I know I'm leaving out right now, but
Yeah.
it's just like comics was always in my life. Then when I went to high school, I went to an art school and all my friends were nerds and we would read comics, we would like share comics and stuff. And then they started doing like comics classes. So I was like, "Oh, this is cool. I didn't know you could actually do it." Right, right, like it's like, "Oh, this is like a job. I didn't know this was actually a job as I'm reading comic." You know what I
Right.
mean? It's like
You're
I
the
didn't think
number
this
of
was
folks
actually a thing. Yeah.
yeah,
If something just
number of folks
happens
that
and
have
I
been on
pick
this
up and read.
right. The number of folks on this podcast that have said that, that have like, one way or another have come to the realization. They're like, "Oh, but people do this for like a living," you know?
Right. I thought it was a thing that just appeared and I buy it and I read it. I didn't think that like someone actually makes it, right? Um and so I was like, okay, well there's classes. This would be fun, right? I can like have fun, try it out, right? And then I was like, oh, this is really fun. And then I went to like, I took classes in college for it and it was under Klaus Janson and I was like, oh, I could do this for real, and I think it was his class that I took it very seriously because he takes it very seriously. And for a while, I thought it was just like something fun and cute I could do and whatever. But then I was like, no, no, I really want to be good at this. He really like, mentally kicked sense into me and was like, okay, if you want to do this, you're gonna be serious. And
Right.
I did. I'm very grateful for him. I love him very much for it. Yeah, so it was like that, and slowly making my way into the con circuit. Just like I was a terrible artist. I still
Really?
think like I still think even 5 years ago it was terrible. I still think I was like terrible 2 years ago. You know what I mean? So it's like you're always like learning, and
Mm-hmm.
I was like at the con circuit, doing my best to hustle, like terrible art, to make friends, and like like I started freelancing here and there while I had like multiple jobs as well, like real jobs. Um and then it was until like I did the math like a few weeks ago, but right before the pandemic happened, I decided to quit my full-time day job because I was like, you know what? I can finally make the jump and I'm going to do it. And then the pandemic happened. So I was working comics part-time for like a year and a half before that. And then so I'm like, okay, what is that? 2018, 19, right?
Yeah.
When did the pandemic happen? 2020
20,
or something like that,
2020.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, 2020. Okay, so like 2018, maybe 18, 19, 20, 1, 2, 3, 4. So like maybe 6, 7 years now that I just started doing this full time. And I was like, that's not that bad, I think. But
No.
I mean, that's not that bad in terms of time. But it feels like I've been doing it forever because I've been like, really trying hard to like get to where I am now for the longest time.
Right.
But
Right.
yeah, it literally was like ever since I was a teen, I wanted to draw comics, and then, slowly working my way up.
So when you're doing that and working other jobs, doing it part time to get to that point, and working as like an artist or a cover artist, whatever it might be, um,
Mhm.
was but from reading comics and then seeing scripts and then working in them, was it had you written other stuff before? Was it a difficult transition for you to be a writer, or for you is it just it's all storytelling? Like what was that like?
For Chitara, you mean, right? For
Yeah,
writing.
yeah, for Cheetara.
Um, so for Maleficent, I had to write as well. But the cool thing about writing for yourself is you could be as sparse and vague as possible, and I'll know what I'm saying. I'll just be like, draw her doing this. And I'm like, okay, I already know what this is. Or like, smile, this person's frowning. Perfect.
Right.
I know what I'm going to draw. So there doesn't have to be that like strict of a script, right? But for Chitara, because I'm writing for someone else, it was a little difficult. And again, I did it for Vampirella, but it was very like short form. It was a very, like one shot, and it wasn't. There was a lot of mistakes that I made, and I was like, okay, I don't want to make the mistakes because I read reviews, I read comments, and
Oh,
so
do
it's
you?
like, oh, I do. I love doing it. I'm one of those freaks who like actually really enjoy reading comments. But I part of like the real criticism. I like between the like the dumb ones, right? But like I was like, okay, I understand the actual critiques, and I think like there's a lot that I didn't do well, and I was like, okay, I mean, who knows? People might hate Chitara, but that's just like how life is, right? That's whatever. Um, but I was like, okay, I want to like learn from that and from Maleficent because it's all me, right? Like if
Yeah.
I mess up Maleficent, it's all my fault. And so that was the stress that made me make sure that there are things that I deliberately chose to do because I get to do it. I'm the creator. Too bad for you if you don't like it. But at the same time, I'm like, I want to make sure this is fun. So there was a lot of like learning curve from that. I think that was like biggest, kick that I had to, take from doing it all by myself. And then
Right.
with Chitara, I was like, does this make sense? Does a sentence even make sense to someone else who's not me? Right. And then like, does the dialogue, people speaking, does that even make sense? Does it sound like real people talking? Right.
Yeah.
And then would they understand? So it was things like that that I like really had to focus on and pay attention to. Um, but it was like I really wanted to make sure that it flowed, and it's still a learning process. I'm still learning, right? I don't think you'll, but that's anything. I think you'll always learn. I'm still learning how to draw, right? But it's also like a Chitara is interesting because I have to be so much more detailed and precise.
Yeah.
It's kind of like I used to write fanfics for fun back in the day, like long time ago. So it kind of like unleashed this like this hidden fanfic thing that I used to do, and it's like, ooh, I remember how to do this. So it's like, okay, this is what I'm gonna do, and it just kind of like, it was fun to do again.
Right.
Remembering that, oh, I've actually done this, not professionally, but like fanfic wise, I can I think I could do it again.
Awesome.
Basically, I'm writing a fanfic, right? So,
well, I mean, I guess kinda. But it's
a professional fic.
But it's professional and it's being published,
right?
and a lot of people are going to read it. You were talking about saying, wanting to make sure the dialogue. You talked earlier about making sure the character dialogue sound the same, but in writing the dialogue that, or at least consistent. But in writing dialogue that it sounds like what the characters would say. Do you when you write, do you say the dialogue out loud? Like whenever I write, I always like act it out, like out loud, not just in my head.
Yeah, for sure. I read it and then I'm like, sometimes if the cool thing about things like ThunderCats is that I can be like, is this how they sound? And I can just rewatch an episode with like them talking, and I'm like, yes, that is how they sound.
Yeah.
But I do say it out again, and then I reread it with just a dialogue to see if it makes sense.
Right.
But again, I'm doing it by myself at home alone, right? So it's different when someone else reads it. But thank God I have an editor, who will let me know if it doesn't work out. So
yeah, absolutely.
I'm not building a rocket ship. Okay, everything will be fine.
Right. When we were talking about reading comics when you were younger or reading manga, but I've said on this podcast before when it has come up that I just never got into manga. Like nothing. I don't have any aversion to it. It just was not anything I was exposed to, and I keep meaning to my daughter, my oldest. She's 11 and she loves anime, manga.
Yeah.
She's, I think, making her way through Demon Slayer right now. Hopefully that's okay for an 11-year-old. But
I don't know. I haven't watched or read Demon Slayer, but it's very popular. I think it is actually.
Yeah. But I was curious.
She's 11.
Like,
I'm sure she's smart.
Yeah,
she's smart. I think she's fine.
She's all right, and she loves to draw. So she has like sketches books filled with characters. She absolutely loves it. But I was just curious.
They're starting them young. Oh,
I know.
God.
She like at 11. That's her current dream at 11 years old is to be like an animator, and so like that's
that's cool.
Her whole thing. Yeah, I've told her she can do whatever she wants to do, but she cannot. She cannot follow in my footsteps and be a lawyer. That's the one thing she cannot do. She can't be a lawyer.
You reversed psychologied her.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding.
Yeah. Wait, she'll probably end up going to law school, and I'll be like, it wasn't a joke.
Right.
I didn't want you to do this. I wanted you to follow your dream. No, but I'm curious, like, if people ever come to you, like, if they have recommendations, is there like a manga or like, a comic series that you would like your number one? You're like, if you've never read manga, start here.
Oh boy, start. I read Dragon Ball. I watched and read Dragon Ball when I was a kid, and that was fun. Oh gosh, I'm like blanking, but I loved indie manga too. Like, Monster is a great one. It's like, and then also like all the Akira Toriyama books, and like not just like Dragon Ball. I mean, like, the older stuff he's done. I'm blanking because it is a little late while recording, so it's
late at night, and I put you on. I put you on the spot.
And also a bunch of like Akira, but that's not recommended for kids.
Oh no, yeah, I was asking for me for when I get started.
Oh, okay, good. Akira's great. I mean, that's like the pinnacle of manga, right, and like anime. But I think you'd like Monster a lot. That's also very classic, I think.
Okay.
But that's like mostly not very mainstream. But if you want mainstream, Death Note is really fun. I used to love Death Note.
Okay.
Yeah, that's like a very long running series where it's like, it's a mystery and there's like action and like intrigue and stuff. Um, One Piece is one of the most popular comic books in the universe.
Yeah. I know they.
Like anime and comics in the universe. Like it blows anything out the water in terms of popularity. So
Okay.
if you have a million hours of time, boom, you got One Piece,
Well, I don't know if I have that much time, but I can start. I can get started somewhere. I just feel like I need
It won't
to. It
be
always comes
over.
up. It always comes up on the podcast when folks are talking about when we talk about like the comics that got you into wanting to make comics, and so many writers and artists like point to manga, and I'm like, I need to get into it and read. I need to start somewhere. So I always ask folks like, where should I start? So
Berserk. I loved reading Berserk when I was younger too. I mean, maybe I started way too young when I shouldn't have. But it's like incredible, right? It's like
yeah.
even if you don't like the story, it's so incredibly beautiful, and it's just like things like that. It really inspired me.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, I appreciate you allowing me to put you on the spot and answer
Fine.
the questions. I wanted to turn a little bit, if we could, just to talk about Carmilla, the first vampire, which I think won the Bram Stoker Award in
It
graphic
did. Thank
novels.
you.
You
Yes.
and Amy Chu out by put out by Dark Horse. I think I don't know if it's won or was nominated for a couple other things, I think too. I mean, it was um pretty popular. But I read it today in preparation for this, and it was on my list to read, but it's one of the reasons I like doing this podcast because like my to be read list gets like shorter when I have somebody on who has something on the list because I'm like, oh well, I gotta read it. Um what a absolutely phenomenal graphic novel. I mean,
Thank you so much.
I love how it took the like I love the interpretation of the original story for I mean for listeners who don't know, the original story I think is from like 1872,
Mhm.
predates Bram Stoker's Dracula
Dracula.
by
That's
about
right.
25 years. It was written by an Irish writer, what is it, Sheridan
Le Fanu.
Le Fanu, right?
Yes.
And
I
in
always wonder if I'm saying that wrong. I am so sorry.
I don't know either. There's I don't know if there's any recorded interviews with him where he says his name because it was,
That's
late
right. Yeah.
1800s. Um,
Well,
what are you gonna do? But no, it's this is set in New York City in the
Mhm,
1990s.
mhm.
Um, it's it kind of brings it brings in the some elements, like some actual like elements from the original story in a very like concrete way. It is it was fantastic. I mean, I just like breezed through it and I just absolutely love the story. I thought it was so fascinating. I love the bits of the narration and how they worked with it. But your artwork was tremendous. I mean, it was just so beautiful. It's just like fine lines, details, just how you created those characters. Um they it just was wonderful. I mean, I just thought it was phenomenal. Yeah, there's not a
Thank you so
question
much.
there. I'm just
No,
telling
no,
you how much I
no.
liked it.
That Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. That's like I don't know what to say. Thank you so much. I'm great with compliments, but no,
Yeah.
really, I seriously appreciate that.
I there were just so many elements of it. Like just so many like little moments. Whether or not it was the main character's name just went right out of my head.
Oh,
Um,
Athena, you're fine.
Athena,
It's
when
late.
yeah, when she was like just the way like from the very beginning, like just her like standing on the train tracks. Those little moments where she kind of talks about the forgotten folks like in the city and the facial acting, like just the little bits of kindness she is showing them. But the scenes with her and Violet,
Mhm.
were just fantastic.
Thank
Just
you.
every time the two of them interacted, I just thought it just looked so great. And there's just such a vitality to Violet. Um, like she just comes right off the page.
Thank you. I mean, yeah, like when it comes to I feel like I want to make sure the acting, especially on the faces, are as like you know. It's kind of a different style that I drew Carmilla with, but I wanted to make sure that like the facial expressions matched what Amy was writing because she writes some really beautiful things. I mean, she's a great writer, right? So I
Sure.
wanted to make sure that it like translates well. Um, and then even if like you can't see the faces, I'm hoping that like the colors of the pages will translate to what the mood of the scene should be so that like even if it's a scene where you can't see the characters immediately, you'll know what like the scene is supposed to be. So like a red scene, so it's like a creepy scene, or like a danger scene, or a blue scene is like a very somber scene, or like blue color is like a somber scene.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
with every step of the way, I'm just trying to match what Amy is doing and making sure that it's like thematic and like has a lot of ambiance, even with the facial expressions. So
I
thank you for noting.
No, I mean, I just thought all of it worked so well. There were just so many elements of it with you and Amy, and I think it was lettered by Sal Cipriano.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
he's wonderful. He's so good. His
Yeah.
lettering is like amazing on that book.
Oh, phenomenal. Especially because he's
It's so
dealing
pretty.
with a lot of different characters, but then kind of dealing with the elements
Yeah.
from the original Carmilla. And it works so well, together. I feel like I've said that like a million times, but it's true. You need to read it because it all just works so well together.
Thank you.
Um, yeah, like
Oh, and then like the little first stuff he does, like with like narration, it's really good. He's so good.
yeah, yeah. Very, very, very well done.
Yeah, and
And
I've worked with him before too on another Dynamite book actually, like a long time ago. So it was like, oh yeah, I know Sal and I trust him.
yeah, I just thought it was wonderful. And especially that the whole ending of it was I'm like, I mean, I know it's been out. I don't want to give anything away because if anyone's listening to this and have not discovered it, and you even have like a tiny bit of interest in, I don't know, gothic horror, New York
Yeah,
City in the 90s, vampire stories.
it's a little
Um,
vintagey, It's like
yeah,
Amy's story is like very specific on what timeline it is. So hopefully my art translates to like the nostalgic gothic fans. It makes sense.
yeah. I definitely, I definitely think so. Um, one of my favorite things was I think it's when Athena is at the club talking to the bartender Mai Tai, and
Mhm.
she's
I love her.
Yeah, I do too. But Athena's describing her, and I think she described her as like, I don't know if she was a dancing girl or something. However, she got to New York in like the 70s, and that she saw New York be at its best, and then its worst, and then back to its
Mhm.
best again. Just the way she described that New York, and like uh, the folks in it kind of embodying all the, I don't know, the different transitions. I mean, New York was essentially a character in and of itself. Yeah, I just thought it
I
was so
try to
good.
No, actually so much like I really try to make sure that the scenery was a part of the story too, because it's like, the what's the point of the setting? If hopefully I got it as not right, but hopefully I got it as nostalgic and like memorable as possible because like then why else is it New York? Who cares then, right? If it's not going to be very New York.
Yeah, exactly. Like why set it in New York? You could just set it anywhere. But if you're going to set it in New York, like it really did feel like a character, in and of itself, especially the
Oh,
way,
that makes me so happy to hear
yeah.
that.
Well, especially like there's just, and it's not anything that's like, it's not anything like there's like a big exposition dump, like to like explain it, or where you're going out of your way to like, oh look, there's this thing here. clearly they want us to know it's New York, but there's just so many like little moments, like almost anywhere else could be like a throwaway line where Athena's describing the Chinatown neighborhood and like how that developed. And then starting, you're like the mid 90s, like 95, 96 when it's set, I think. And she's talking about seeing little bits of gentrification start to creep in, and you see some of that in like the artwork. Yeah, it really gives such an added dimension to the story.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, so I didn't have many questions. I just wanted to mention it because I read it, and everyone should go read it
Thank
because it
you.
was fantastic. And did I read? Is there a second one, a volume 2,
Actually,
the Carmilla the
yeah,
Last Vampire Hunter? I think is that coming out this summer?
it's actually coming out very close to Cheetara, if not the
Whoa!
same
Wow!
week. Yeah,
Wow! Well, that's exciting.
yeah,
Two books on the
yeah.
shelf in the same week.
I know it's too much. No. I'm very excited for it. Volume 2 is really fun. It's I'm not gonna say anything because it's not. I don't want to spoil it, but it's like a continuation of the last page.
Okay. That
If you've
I
read
can
it,
see that.
you know. If you know,
Yeah.
you know.
I know. I know. I'm very excited. I'm very excited for it. And I just really was blown away by it. And
Thank you.
yeah, like I said, I'd been wanting to read it, and glad I wish I would have read it sooner. Glad I did get a chance to get it and
Late
go
than
through it.
never.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, and especially with the second one coming out. But
Yeah. And also the first volume is gonna be translated in German too, so I'm super excited for that. To
that's
all the German speakers out there.
Yeah, well, hey, I mean, they might like vampire stories as much as the next person,
I mean,
Um,
if not them, who?
exactly. If not them, who? Uh, yeah.
I don't know what that means.
And so, I guess I just wanted to, kind of before I let you go because I know it's late where both of us are located, on the East Coast. So with Chitara, was there, without giving anything away, were there any moments that you really had a lot of fun with, like, having the freedom to kind of do what it is you wanted and kind of build out her backstory? Um, was there anything that I'm just kind of curious as to what really excited you in terms of writing it? Maybe not so much in terms of the character aspect of it, but like a big action set piece or something maybe you hadn't really gotten a chance to do and write before with something like Maleficent, because you're dealing with there's magic and other things, but you have outer space elements in this whole new world. They're essentially Thunderian royalty. Was there anything that can kind of hint or tease at that's coming up that you were really excited to kind of get to dig into?
Yeah, I mean, like for Maleficent, sorry, it was supposed to be like just one thing, and it was very limited, right? I'm just telling her story, and there's not much I could do with that. But with Chitara, it's like I wanted to be a very like I wanted to read as a mainstream book, right? Maleficent, you can read it as kind of like it could fit into the indie world because of how like slow and like how quiet everything is, right? So it's like more of a feeling story, if that
Okay.
makes sense. But
Yeah.
Tara's also I deliberately made it very uh, like I thought a lot about like what she would think about or what she would be like as like her own character. So that's fun. Like I can actually like be as I can be too much if I wanted to, because why not, right? This is like a property people really love who didn't have a voice, so I can be as extra as possible with her. But um, it's kind of intimidating because it's a mainstream book in terms of what the property is, and so I was like, okay, this has to flow like a mainstream story. It has to have like the peaks and the lows and the action, and it has to have romance, and you know what I mean. It has to have
Yeah.
like all the good things that make it fun to read for everyone. So that's like very fun. It's like if you want to talk about art in terms of genre, it's like if you're like a slice of life artist and then they're like, okay, now make an action book. It's like that. Now I get to do something actiony and like different.
Yeah.
So it was really like so that in itself was super cool.
Awesome. Well, I'm looking forward to it. I've really liked what the main series with Declan Shalvey and Drew Moss have done, and Stephen Mooney in the main
Yeah,
series.
I mean they're great.
But I'm super excited for this. Just having gotten a little sneak peek. I really think what you and Domenico Carbone have put together something great, and I'm very excited for it. So, listeners, July 3rd, go get Cheetara #1. And if you have not read Carmilla the First Vampire, go do it so that you're ready for when Carmilla the Last Vampire, the first vampire, and then Carmilla the Last Vampire Hunter also comes
Yes.
out, I think, in July. That's through Dark Horse. Cheetara is through Dynamite. And if you're Disney fans, I'm sure you can get the trade of Maleficent, which is also through Dynamite, which Sue wrote and did the artwork for. So a lot of good stuff for you to check out this summer from Soo Lee.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. And hey, I would love to talk again to see what you thought of issue 1, and then we can deep dive into that.
Oh yeah, I love doing that. I doesn't happen often, but a couple of times I've had creators come back and kind of like, go through the series and talk about choices they've made, and I always love doing that and digging into it.
I'm sure people are going to want to grill me on why I don't noises that I made for the characters. So I'm looking forward to it.
All right. Well, Sue, I really appreciate you coming on the podcast. Oh, before I go, a shout out to my brother Bobby, the Cryptid Creator Corner's #1 most dedicated fan. Bobby listens to all my episodes, and
that's sweet.
It is. Thank you. He buys a lot of comics too, so I usually get a text after he listens, like add that to my pull list.
Well, thank you so much, Bobby.
Thank you very much for coming on the podcast. I really appreciate it. And yes, once that's out, I'd love to have you back. This has been an absolute joy.
Yeah, for sure. It's here. This was fun. Thank you. And thank you to all the listeners.
Yeah, thank you for listening, listeners. And go find me on social media. Let me know what you're reading. Love to talk with you about it. And good night. And I'll see you next time.
Bye.
This is Byron O'Neill, one of your hosts of the Cryptid Creator Corner, brought to you by Comic Book Yeti. We hope you've enjoyed this episode of our podcast. Please rate, review, subscribe, all that good stuff. It lets us know how we're doing, and more importantly, how we can improve. Thanks for listening.
If you enjoyed this episode of the Cryptid Creator Corner, maybe you would enjoy our sister podcast, Into the Comics Cave. Listen and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.